Alright, so let's get started with our first example for when it comes to graph. Let's do something a little bit simple. Let me give you an example, asking graph the following points, right? And let's say that they give you some points that you guys could graph. So let's say you get point A in the coordinate plane of -2 and 4, point B in 3, -3. Point C in the point 3 and 4, and point D in -1 and -3. So with our graph, we would draw the Cartesian plane or the coordinated plane. So you'll call this X and you'll call this Y. The first point we're dealing with is point A. Point A is telling us to go 2 to the left, which all the negatives are, and then up 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So we always start in our x's, since when it comes to points, we always have x in our, and then we have y coordinate. So x would be -2, and then we're going up 4. So it's gonna be our first point, A. And then we have the second point. We have point B, 3 and -3. So we would go 3 to the right since it's a positive, and 3 to the bottom since we are dealing in the negative coordinates. So this would be your point B. Then point C, you're going 3 to the right and then 4 up. So we're going in this quadrant, which is point C. And then point D would go -1 to the left and -3 to the bottom, which would point on our, on our third quadrant actually. So going back to what we did earlier, our quadrants, the different types of quadrants, we know that for point C is in quadrant 1, point A is in quadrant 2, point D is in quadrant 3, and point B is in quadrant 4. As you can see, they're in different areas of the graph. Right now, there's not a lot to worry about. But there is going to be, a big difference later on when we, talk about more advanced graphs per se. Okay, so for example 2, I want you to just graph a simple one, right? So I want you to graph, let's say I want you to graph the point 0, 1. And also, I want you to graph y equals 1. Right? Well, what is this? What's the meaning of this? We haven't seen this before. The only thing we've seen are points. Hold your horses. Don't worry. I got you. All right. So let's go back to the one that we know how to graph, right? So first, build your Cartesian plane. Let's graph the point 0, 1, and we could call that point A. It doesn't really matter what we call it. We could always call it a point. We could call it point A, point B, etc. It doesn't matter. So we're going to start at 0. We note that 0 is always here in the middle, and then we'll go up 1. So there's our point, which we call that point A. But now, what about this? What about y equals 1? Well, how do we graph that, right? So in other words of saying y equals 1 is just saying that for every x you have, y is always going to be 1. So in other words, in numbers, we said that this is the one we're graphing. So what we're saying is that it doesn't matter what our x is. X could be anything. Our y is always going to be 1. So we could have points, literally, we could have point, 2 and 1. We could also have 3 and 1. A negative if you wanted to. So it doesn't really matter what your x is. The only thing that pertains for this problem is that your y is going to be 1. So let's try to graph that, right? Okay, let me use an orange one, all right, so you guys can see the difference. Let's graph, the one we called 2, 1. So we go 2 to the right, and then 1 to the top. We call that, 3 and 1. So we go 3 here, and we go 1 up here, since this is 1. -1 and 1. -1 and 1 up here. And then we also have -3 and 1. -2, -3, and then we go -1 up here. So we know that it doesn't matter what x is. We know that this whole thing is going to be covered by the line y equals 1. Like I said, it doesn't matter what your x is, as long your output is always going to be 1. And what I mean by output is your y. So Input means your x. Output means your y's. Same thing, x, y. You could also call it input, output. That is usually the terminology you will hear in your classes moving forward when it comes to graph itself. Yeah, so my next question is going to be, is this point the same as y equals 1? Is that the same? Yes or no? Take a minute, pause the video if you need to. Think about it for a sec, right? Going back to the graph here. I'm asking you, is the 0.01 the same as, y equals 1? The answer is no. One of them is just a point, which, we ended up calling 0.1. The other one, on the other hand, though, it's a line. Now, is it a horizontal line or a vertical line? And in this case, it's a horizontal line. Remember, horizontal line means from left to right, and the reason why it's horizontal line is because it's y equals 1. This whole thing. So yeah, they don't mean the same thing. One's just a point. The other one means overall, the whole line, the whole y equals 1.